All over the world, archaeologists find lead coffins with human remains. Usually, people with radioactive radiation are buried in such coffins, but these findings are thousands of years old. In those days, nothing emitted radioactivity, so whose remains were found there? Did you know that there is another Sphinx on our planet? And the fact that the ancient Babylonian tablets confirm the flood that occurred thousands of years ago. You will learn about this and not only in this video if you watch it to the end. Hi friend, you're on the KirTop channel. Mysterious artifact of Koso. On February 13, 1961, Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Mike Meixel were collecting geodes, cavities in calcareous or volcanic rocks filled with mineral matter, from Mount Koso in Olancha, California. When another massive geode was found, it was sawn and found inside a kind of roundish body, obviously made of ceramics. In addition, the object exhibited magnetic properties. A striking find fell into the hands of archaeologists, and they established that its age is at least 500,000 years. Further research revealed that there is a metal case inside the ceramic, and X-rays were even able to detect a tiny spring. At first, the exhibit moved from exhibition to exhibition, where scientists had the opportunity to conduct their own research of an amazing find. No one could understand what it really was in front of them. At some point, specialists Pierre Stromberg and Paul Heinrich appeared, who declared that it was just a 1920s car spark plug. However, this did not in any way explain the candle's entry into the 500,000-year-old object. After that, the find was simply stolen, and now we have no opportunity to conduct a new study using modern technologies. It is likely that things that can force you to revisit history turn out to be very uncomfortable. Sphinx found in Pakistan. What does Pakistan have to do with Egypt when it finds a statue that resembles a Sphinx? The second mysterious Sphinx, was it formed naturally or artificially created? The Sphinx is a statue next to Pyramid of Khufu, outwardly resembling the body of a lion and the head of a man. As for the portrait part, there is a theory that it was created by the ancient Egyptian pharaoh Khafra from his portrait. Another point of view is that radioactive was based on a portrait of his father Khufu. As for who built the Sphinx, the ancient Egyptologists believed that it was Pharaoh Khufu who built it to guard his pyramid. On the other side of the African continent, 6,000 kilometers east of Balochistan province, Pakistan, there is a large number of natural rock paintings and another Sphinx. Many researchers believe that it was not artificially carved and that its appearance resembles a Sphinx. In fact, it is a coincidence that formed naturally. Many believe that this place may indeed be a very old Sphinx. According to experts' estimates, this place is about 12,500 years old. This Sphinx has a horizontal notch on the forehead and a headband. It also has 4 visible legs, and its shape is almost the same as that of the Egyptian Sphinx. But many people disagree that this statue was formed naturally. Others believe that this statue was carved by the ancient Egyptians as a teaching before the construction of the Sphinx. Mayan Tablets. Theories of human contact with extraterrestrial civilizations have fueled the imaginations of conspiracy theorists for decades. A law has already been set on the topic of representatives of intelligent races in space. Lovers of the topic have long announced the presence of their extraterrestrial civilizations on Earth. Believe it or not, some evidence backs for questions that are sometimes difficult for Earth scientists to answer. The discussion about extraterrestrial intelligence has flared up again thanks to a unique object found in Mexico, which, according to some experts, represents scenes of contact with higher civilizations that came from the universe. The Maya-created stone and metal discs have lain in the warehouses of the National Institute of Anthropology and History in Mexico for over 80 years since their discovery in the vicinity of Calamcula. Their photographs were first presented to the public by archaeologists Klaus Dahn and Dr. Nassim only during a press conference in 2011. The tablets immediately became a sensation, discussed not only in the scientific community. The artifacts feature 2 extremely eloquent drawings. The first contains, as some argue, a diagram of the Earth and conical spacecraft revolving around it. Near one of these objects is a figurine that very much resembles an astronaut with an extremely accurately marked overalls and a helmet. The second disc shows a figure in a stream of light pulling in a conical object. Interestingly, the drawings are extremely accurate and well preserved. The appearance of the figures suggests vivid associations with the cosmonaut costume of the 20th century. The question arises, where did the ancient people have such a fantasy? For many, these findings indicate long-term contacts with extraterrestrial civilizations, as well as the cooperation and care of other advanced races for the inhabitants of our planet. Ancient chronicles had the name of the Scorpio King. Before the release of the action-packed historical thriller The Mummy Returns in 2001, only Egyptologists and fans of William Golding's books knew about the existence of such a historical character as the King of Scorpio. At the same time, the personality of this pharaoh was presented in such a way that he looked more like some kind of fictional mystical creature than a real ruler of the Egyptian state. The fact that in the history of Egypt there was a pharaoh named Scorpio, Egyptologists learned at the end of the 19th century. Then, during archaeological excavations in Hyracon Palace, a very ancient tomb was discovered. It was also plundered. Scientists nevertheless found a number of objects that were quite valuable from an archaeological point of view: jewelry, ceramics, a fragment of the ruler's mace. Most of these finds bore the name Scorpion. Thus, a new ruler, Scorpio, was included in the pantheon of Egyptian pharaohs, and for a whole century he single-handedly bore the name of a poisonous arthropod inhabitant of the desert, until 1988, when Egyptologists had to slightly correct the list of the rulers of Egypt. In this list, the first rulers of Egypt, Manetho, as befits an Egyptian priest, designated the gods Hapi, Maat, Osiris, Ptah, Ra, Set, Thoth, Horus, and Shu. Ordinary mortals followed immediately, the first of which was the pharaoh Menes, and the last were the pharaohs of the Xerxes dynasty who ruled before the Ptolemies. However, in this royal list there was no mention of either Scorpio or other kings of ancient Egypt. All this confusion lasted until the Egyptologists sat down thoroughly to study the history of the rulers of Egypt, and they did not find that between the gods and the real Egyptian pharaoh Menes, in fact there was a whole galaxy of previously unknown kings. In order to somehow streamline this moment, historians called all the rulers of this era the pharaohs of pre-dynastic Egypt, or the kings of the Oo dynasty. It was among these pharaohs that both Scorpions were who ruled Egypt in the 4th millennium BC and as, more than 100 years apart. Thus, no one knew about the existence of Pharaoh Scorpio I for several thousand years, despite the fact that this ruler in one is truly the first pharaoh in the history of Egypt. A collection of treasures in the oldest capital of China. Back in the 1920s, the ruins of the city of Sangdue, which was the first capital of the ancient kingdom of Shu, were discovered there. Excavations have been going on since 1986, when archaeologists discovered 2 sacrificial pits filled with treasures. Last year, the most ambitious excavations were carried out. About a dozen sacrificial pits with 1,500 artifacts were found. And now, archaeologists have announced that they have been able to excavate 6 more previously unknown sacrificial pits. They found about 500 fully and fragmentarily preserved relics of great historical and material value. Suffice it to say, the most of the finds are exquisite gold masks, jade and ivory items, and bronze artifacts. Taking into account last year's findings, the Sangdue treasury has been replenished with more than 2,000 items. Among them, for example, there is a unique sacred tree made of bronze. In general, for the entire period of excavations in the ancient capital of the First Kingdom in China, about 10,000 cultural relics were found, the age of which is from 3,000 to 5,000 years. It is believed that the kingdom of Shu itself arose about 5,000 years ago. Archaeologists reported during the recent work very rare and valuable large bronze vessels were discovered, some of which, after examination, are likely to receive the status of national treasures. The fact is that some of these bronze items have a unique shape, which researchers have never seen before. Numerous pieces of ivory and jade are no less exciting finds. A significant part of them were in only one sacrificial pit. It is noteworthy that there were no bronze items in this pit, which indicates some special traditions that existed during the reign of Shu. A 3,700-year-old artifact confirms a global flood. According to the Bible, God commissioned Noah to build a giant ark that would protect him and the animals from the worldwide flood. The element calmed down after 150 days, and the ark itself stopped on the mountains of Ararat. This passage from scripture has fascinated researchers and archaeologists for decades, as Ararat is a dormant volcano in Turkey. While many believe that there never was a flood and Noah is a fictional character, some experts are convinced that there is ample evidence to support the biblical account. The recent solution to an ancient puzzle by linguist Irvin Finkel coincides with the biblical description of the ark docked at Mount Ararat. According to Finkel, the place where Noah's ark stopped is described on a Babylonian tablet, which is 3,700 years old. The so-called Mayan Tablet, dated 1700 BC, contains 60 lines of cuneiform text, which also tells the story of an ancient flood. In this story, a man named Atrahasis learns of a divine conspiracy to flood the earth and builds a circular ark to survive the flood. According to Professor Mayer, he also moored at Mount Ararat near the present-day eastern border of Turkey. The Bible often gives archaeologists precise advice on what and where they will find. In this case, the tablet also indicates that Noah's Ark is still awaiting its opening on Mount Ararat. The wheel, the greatest invention of the ancient world. This is a complex invention, and it was so easy for young mankind to not invent it. After all, there is no wheel in nature, and nothing can push primitive people to create it. All primitive technologies came from natural devices. A stick became a spear, a piece of flint, a knife. A forked stick became a pitchfork. But the wheel is not there. It is a fictional artifact of Homo sapiens. When the first villages of settled farmers appeared along the rivers, crafts appeared, and 6,000 years ago, Sumer invented a potter's wheel to make pots. This is not a wheel yet, but a circle revolves around an axis, and a start has been made. Then the cities of the Sumerians and trade between them went up. To transport goods by water, people invented boats and rafts, but the problem of transportation by land remained, because you couldn't carry it on your shoulders. Then people tamed draft animals, horses and bulls. They took 100 kilograms on their mighty backs and unloaded people. But the Sumerians quickly reached the limit of baskets hung on animals, and again wondered what to do. And then they came up with the world's first transport, a sled on skids. True, you can't drive much on a sled in Iraq, and then an unknown designer saw a potter's wheel. The first wheels of mankind were fixed tightly to the axle and rotated with the axle. Later, people will come up with fixed axles around which the wheels rotate. The carts of people were immediately four-wheeled, and the life of the ancient world accelerated 100 times. A pot with a picture of a cart, 5,500 years old, was found in Poland. On the Danube, 5,000-year-old clay models of carts have been found. And in England, wheel tracks have been found on a road 6,000 years old. And in Russia, a cart was found in the Mons not much younger, 4,800 years old. But the wheel, besides life, has become a technology of death. Kings and generals received chariots and carts, were able to move thousands of soldiers and food for hundreds of kilometers. This spurred the creation of empires, and the most secluded city in the world is no longer protected. Who was buried in lead coffins? In 1934, the great woman physicist Marie Curie died in Paris. She was buried in the cemetery next to the grave of Pierre Curie, her husband, who had died 28 years earlier. In 1995, it was decided to transfer the remains of the spouses to the Pantheon, where the bodies of the greatest people of France lie: Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Victor Hugo, etc. But the Pantheon is visited by numerous tourists. Scientists who studied the remains of the four great physicists said that they need to be enclosed in a lead shaft, because even now they emit radioactivity that can harm the health of visitors. Archaeologists know that the ancient Romans did not so rarely bury the dead in lead coffins. Such burials have been found in many countries where they were once Roman colonies: Spain, Palestine, Syria, Britain, etc. In the same France, near the city of Autun, a Roman necropolis with a sarcophagus of the 5th century AD was found, in which there were 2 lead coffins with bodies. In total, 8 ancient Roman coffins made of lead were found in this necropolis. Most of the lead coffins with the remains of the ancient Romans were found in Italy itself. At the cemetery located on the side of the Roman road of Gallica, leading from Verona to Mediolanum, modern Milan, 4 lead coffins were found at once. 2 such coffins, also from Roman times, were found near the monastery of San Pietro in Cariano. Moreover, in this case, there was no doubt that it was a Roman who was buried here from the beginning. Scenes of gladiatorial battles were depicted on the surface of the coffin. A Veneto armed with a spear stands against a boar running towards him, and a bestiary against a bull. In total, more than 40 Roman graves with lead coffins were found. What is the reason that the Romans buried their dead in a lead shell? After all, ancient scientists could not know any anything about radiation, but even if they did, then there simply were no active sources of radioactive radiation. In addition, the remains in these coffins were not at all distinguished by an increased content of radioactive materials in them. At the same time, there was clearly some reason for burying people in a lead coffin. Lead is a very heavy metal with a wall thickness of 5 to 12 centimeters. The mass of such a coffin reached 350–500 kilograms. Moreover, in the remote Roman provinces, such a coffin could only be made in a large city where there were corresponding workshops. Considering the considerable cost of the lead itself, this method of burial was extremely expensive. This is the real reason for the Roman burial in lead coffins. It was an indicator of the income level and family status of the deceased. Only the wealthiest could afford to order and pay for the funeral in a lead coffin. There was also a purely practical reason. Ordinary graves, in which bodies simply wrapped in cloth were buried, were often plundered, because the relatives of the deceased often put weapons and other valuable items with the deceased. There was no obstacle for robbers and a wooden coffin or even a stone crypt. But the lead sarcophagus from the grave was almost impossible to remove entirely due to its weight, and it was rather difficult to open it right on the spot. 6,000-year-old alien mask. In Bulgaria, archaeologists, while carrying out excavations at the site of an ancient settlement, discovered a prehistoric mask that combines human and animal features. It is remarkably similar to the alien image that science fiction has created for us. A prehistoric clay mask depicting the face of some mythical creature without a mouth dates back to the 5th millennium BC. It was found by an archaeological team led by Professor Vasily Nikolov at the prehistoric settlement of Salt Pit near the settlement of Provadia in northeastern Bulgaria. Visually, this bizarre prehistoric mask, which combines features of humans and animals, resembles an alien from a science fiction movie. The settlement of Provadia, also dating back to the 5th millennium BC, is known as the most ancient city in Europe. According to scientists, the found artifact dates back to the late Neolithic period, that is, it was created around 4000 BC. Judging by the description provided, the artifact has an almost regular triangular shape. Its front side is prominently protruding forward, and the back is, as it were, depressed inward and rather roughly processed. Both corners of the top of this prehistoric mask have short projections. According to archaeologists, they may be stylized ears. Rate the video with a thumb up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The more you are on the channel, the more archaeologists are busy with their work. Thanks for your views. Bye everyone!